Languages have always been our main means of communication and cohesion, so it is interesting to understand and analyze how our brain works in relation to language and learning. The main structure involved in linguistic activity are neurons. The linguistic signal is produced and perceived at the level of the nervous system, which is made up of billions of neurons. The neurons work in assemblies, the so-called neuronal circuits, which are responsible for learning. Learning is characterized by the formation of new neural networks. The two main areas involved in language are Broca's area, which controls movement for the comprehension and formulation of words, and Wernicke's area for sensory integration. These two areas are connected through the arcuate fasciculus. It should be noted that there are many other areas of the brain involved in language as a global expressive phenomenon, including the thalamus, a center of integration and coordination of linguistic information. The birth of neuroscience is attributed to Paul Broca, a French anthropologist and surgeon who founded the discipline in 1861 based on the observation of patients who had lost the ability to articulate words. The patients had no damage to their phonatory organs, but all had the same lesions in the left hemisphere. During these years, the so-called brain dominance theory was developed, as the first neuroscientists were convinced that language was located only in the left hemisphere, which was considered the dominant hemisphere. It was only later that experiments on split-brain patients, namely those patients who underwent the severing of the corpus callosum, a bundle of nerve fibers connecting the two cerebral hemispheres, made it possible to study the two hemispheres separately for the first time, and it was possible to confirm the specialization of the left hemisphere for linguistic function, but it was also possible to establish that the strategies of the two hemispheres for elaborating the same information are of different quality, of an analytical type for the left and holistic type for the right. The left hemisphere interprets and structures the linguistic text, while the right hemisphere allows us to understand the socio-communicative context in which it has been elaborated. Therefore, we speak of complementarity. The term in fact indicates the constant dialogue between the two hemispheres during language learning, which can in fact be defined as complementarity since the brain in all its faculties work as a whole. Marcel Danesi, in 1986, proposed the bimodal view that claims that the natural learning system of the brain integrates and applies the modes of analytical thinking and synthetic thinking as needed. Today, language teaching does not embrace a single method or approach, but aims to be an interdisciplinary science open to new adaptation and contribution, with an eye always turned to the past, as every discipline is nothing but an accumulation of experience and knowledge handed down.
A bilingual individual following an injury involving the brain may manifest language deficits or aphasias, which may affect one language and spur the other, or affect both, but not necessarily with the same severity. Aphasia is defined as a language deficit due to a brain disease that leads to an alteration in the ability to understand and produce language. It is generally believed that the dominant language is spared because it is the most consolidated in our brain. The unconscious advantage of bilingual individuals is the lifelong training they perform, which has been shown to be very useful in preserving a young brain, even in old age. In a world where learning languages even at an advanced age is increasingly becoming a necessity, it is interesting to ask what benefits mastering more than one language can bring and how bilingualism can help prevent cognitive decline. Studies show that being bilingual can slow down the onset of dementia and neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's up to a few years. However, these diseases have complex causes and therefore cannot be completely prevented. Nonetheless, cognitive training can be very helpful in delaying the onset of the symptoms. This thesis is supported by an Italian study conducted by Ospedale Vita Salute San Raffaele and the University of Milan on 85 people diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. The study reveals that people who speak two languages show greater activity in certain areas of the brain, so they are better able to cope with the damage caused by the disease. And that's not all. As Daniela Perani, a research coordinator, points out, the more the two languages are used, the greater the effect on the brain and the better the performance. The point, therefore, is not to know two languages, but to use them constantly and actively throughout life. Nowadays, due to the key role played by the mastery of several languages, both in work and social fields, it is worth analyzing the neurological processes that predispose the acquisition of languages. Making them known will be useful at the educational level to formulate syllabuses for language teachers, at the medical level for the rehabilitation of language disorders, and on a personal level, since the knowledge of several languages is excellent training to slow down cognitive decline and keep our brain young.